And then was it the Cranley Territorials you joined?
No, it was Guildford. It was Guildford. I don't know well, I did know that Cranley existed, of course, but Guildford was always my direction. Anyway, whatever, shopping or very rare sort of Cranley, you know. So anyway, it was in April that my mother set up for me to come home. I got a motorbike sidecar at the time, and she said, it's come over the radio that if you join the Territorials before midnight, you won't be conscripted. Well, I would have been the first lot of militia, and I would have been called up somewhere around June. Doug would know, almost similar to myself. So I get off into Guildford with more or less a few minutes to spare. So the officers and sergeant major and whatever sitting at the table. So I understand you want to join the Territorials. Yes. So you do whatever is necessary. I suppose you sign something. They give you the Queen's shilling, and you're in the Territorials. But I slipped up rotten because, yes, if I'd have waited for my call up, which would have been in June, and it would have been for 6 months, but it would have been done and done with. But as you know yourself, being a Territorial, I joined the Territorials, I was already in, and then they tell you what's expected of you, which was you will have to get in 40 drills a year, which is almost 2 nights into Guildford, isn't it? You know, every week, and you would have to go to all the camps: Easter camp, Whitsun camp, and a week in August down at was it Falmouth or Falmouth?
Fulmer.
Yes,
Near
yes,
Brighton,
yes.
yeah.
Under canvas, and that was pretty rotten because what I remember of that, probably sort of digressing a bit, was that we were fortunate that the 5th Queens up on the brow of the hill, and then there's a valley, so the 5th were up the top, fortunately, and in the valley were the 6th, and it was terrible weather, you know, and you were doing night ops and all this sort of thing. You go out, get wet, come back, and you know what it is. What is it? 20 in a bell tent, something like that. And but I think if I remember rightly, or there were deaths in the 6th through pneumonia and that sort of thing. It was very, very bad conditions. I think a couple of chaps actually died of pneumonia. Somebody might dispute that, but this is more or less what was going around at the time. So that was it. And of course, the thing that annoyed me about that, the only thing is it would have been worse off, I expect, for 6 months as regards loss of money. I was then 20 and finished my apprenticeship and a full-blown chippy and getting good pay, which was, we worked a 5-day week, 10 hours a day, 50 hours, and that would come out at about £3, 4 shillings a week, which was pretty good pay compared with a lot of other people around at that time. So of course you give up, when you go to these camps, Easter, Whitsun and August, with the building in those days, no work, no pay. So of course, the worst one was, of course, the week. So you could have a year's holiday if you like, but you don't get any pay. So I had to go to a week's camp and lose a week's pay. All these sort of things gripe you a bit, really. You know, it's something you don't want to do in the first place. Anyway, so that was it, and I don't, that was my call up. I don't know if that answers, you know, if there's anything I can add to that. I don't think there
No, that's fine. So your first camp was at Fulmer.
Yes.
In 39.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
You weren't mobilised straight after the camp?
Well, in what way?
You know, called up for full-time service. When did that occur?
Well, yes, that was, war was declared. We were called up a week before war was declared. Was it on a Sunday, the 5th of September, something like that?
Yeah.
Well, my girlfriend and I were then at Harwich. That was her home. We were there on holiday. And she worked at a big house, and they expected, well, they'd started, a bit of bombing in London, I think, or it was imminent. And so children from London were already being evacuated to the country. And the big house that my girlfriend was working was receiving these children. So in actual fact, she got a message to return directly to help with these children. So in fact, she was called back to her work before I was called up. But anyway, this was the weekend, and so we left on Saturday morning, and got home, I suppose, Saturday afternoon, and then it came over the radio that all Territorials and reservists had to report to their barracks or whatever. So having done over 100-mile journey back from Harwich to Shamley Green, and then thinking that you've got to report, I was probably a good soldier then. Anyway, so I go off into Guildford about, I don't know, 8:30, something like that, Saturday evening, and I just said, what was their RSN? Anyway, doesn't matter. RSN Newman, I think, nice chap. So he was there, and he said, yes, you're reporting in, yes. So he said, well, we haven't much accommodation here, he said, because just from their drill hall, just across the road was Sandfield Terrace, and semi-detached houses, rooms about 10 foot square, something like that, and there was 4 chaps to a room with 2 blankets. So I realised this afterwards, but he said, well, we haven't got much room for you, see? So I said, well, that's fair enough. I said, I only live at Shamley Green, so I can go home and I'll report in the morning. Of course, realised pretty smartly he was already in the army. So he said to me, oh, no, you don't, he said, you're not going home, he said, you're in the army now. So I had to collect a couple of blankets, be taken over the road to Sandfield Terrace, where there was 2 or 3 chaps in the room already, spend the night on bare boards with 2 blankets, as opposed to going home. I was pretty green then, but I wouldn't be so green now, don't worry, I wouldn't have reported straight away. I'd have still been in Harwich. But there you are, that's how I was called up.